Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Continuing on our little mini-series after the Stormwater 2018 conference, which was, at the time we're filming this, last week, but by the time you're seeing this, it'll be a couple of weeks ago, because we've got a couple of episodes coming out. We have a guest with us today, Jonas Larsen. Now, Jonas works at Renew Solutions, and he gave a presentation at the conference bringing soil science knowledge and applying it into a bioretention space. And for me, that's super interesting because I have talked at length about bioretention systems and tried to dabble into this. Well, how do we make filter media that's hospitable for plants? And I'm really keen to get into this chat with Jonas because something that you've discovered through looking at literature from other fields has, I mean, it's probably too much to say confirmed, but added some support to something that I felt I had seen happening. So let's get into this. Actually, before we get into this, forgive the fact that I've clearly been surfing. We're filming this on the Gold Coast. What else was I going to do but go surfing before we film this? Okay, Jonas, why don't we get into this? Give us the introduction to this talk and then we'll chat about it.
Well, essentially, I'm trained in soil science and ecology. And then when I kind of got thrown into this stormwater management, so it's this stormwater industry, and I was trying to find my place, I guess, where I'd fit in and like apply some of the knowledge I have into the stormwater industry. And when I first came here, I was just like how does any of this apply? I'm like, maybe some of it loosely applies. And then I found out about bioretention systems, and then I was talking to a lot of people about them. Some bit to you about some of the issues they have, and
but you were already on this journey before we actually talked. So give you credit for that.
So I started talking to people, and they're finding out some of the issues in regards to what the problems bioretention has, and so one of them was plant establishment, and the other major issue is leaching. So I figured, like, why is this happening, and why is it going on for so long? Shouldn't people have solved this problem by now? It's definitely a solvable problem. And then I looked at the guidelines that a lot of bioretention systems have been following for a number of years, particularly the Forbes 2009 spec, and it looked a bit funny to me, just for like my knowledge on soil science and stuff from my previous training. And so I went to the guys at Renew Solutions and I'm like, hey, can I do a study, or just a preliminary study on, bioretention filter media, and to try and figure out some of the issues it might have, and like generate some hypothesis for future research. And so I literally just compared the Forbes 2009 spec, because I think that's a great example of a lot of what bioretention systems have followed.
It's what the vast majority of bioretention systems in Australia have been built to, and now there is an updated version of it in the CRC Water Sensitive Cities Biofilters Adoption Guideline. But you're absolutely right. If you were to randomly visit a bioretention system, you'd be more likely than not to be Forbes spec.
Yeah, I looked at the updated spec that people follow now, and it's not very defined in regards to the aspect that I wanted to look at particularly, which is organic matter. I think you talked about this before.
We can talk about the changes in that once we get into this and know a little bit more about what you found. So
I just compared the Forbes spec to soil science literature, and this is not to brag, but within 5 hours I found something pretty significant, and that's regarding the, minimum threshold of soil organic carbon that is required for establishing soil functional properties desirable for plant health and overall soil functionality and soil health. And if you were to follow the Forbes spec of Forbes recommendation of organic carbon, this falls below that threshold. And that threshold that I found throughout the soil science literature is roughly about 2% soil organic carbon.
Yeah, so this is probably a good point to kind of define a couple of terms and then dig into this a little. So people are probably familiar with organic matter because you can think of organic matter and go, I can think of my compost heap, or I can think of some leaves breaking down in a forest or something. But soil organic carbon is a specific component therein. Like organic matter, you were explaining this to me before, includes you say the nitrogen that's in it
Yeah.
and the phosphorus
There's
that's in
all
it.
other components found in
Yeah.
organic matter. That's what organic matter is. But but organic carbon is just the carbon fraction of organic matter.
Yeah.
And that's what soil scientists use when they want to study the effects of organic matter on soil health or plant health and all that stuff. They convert it to organic carbon.
Yeah. And you said to me that there's a fairly well-established ratio of
Yes.
total organic or soil organic carbon to organic matter.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're talking about dry weights of
Yeah.
both. So we're not
Dry
talking about
weight.
wet, we're not talking about you dug it out of a rainforest that's wet, we're talking about it's been dried.
Oh, yeah.
And that ratio you said is
About 58%. And
Yeah.
50, the ratio is about 58% organic carbon.
yeah, so 58% of the organic matter
Yeah.
is total organic carbon.
Yeah.
But I suppose for the purposes of, I think in a minute we're probably going to do some rough calculations, we can say it's a bit over half. Just because I reckon
it's just a little bit over half. Some
Yeah.
an updated version of the conversion factor that I used, they estimated the carbon content of 58% being a little bit of an overestimate. Some other people who've done reviews think it's a little bit of a underestimate. So it's just a good
Yeah.
rough area.
and it's nature, right?
Yeah.
So it's never
Yeah.
like it's never going to be.
Oh,
Every soil is
Yeah, no,
exactly.
everything's dynamic. Everything's has its own character. Everything. There's no blanket number for
Yeah.
a lot of things. Unless we're talking about physics, but we're not talking about that. We're
Yeah.
talking about living systems.
But
so-
what it does allow us to talk about is, so if I remember correctly, the 2009 Forbes spec presented a range of acceptable organic matter from 2% to 5%.
Yeah.
So what that would mean is, if you're saying, have you said already, the threshold that you found in the literature is about 2% total organic carbon. So you found in the literature that there's a threshold of total organic carbon
Yeah.
at, above 2%, plants are generally going to be happy. And as you start to go below 2%, they start, like the soil starts to break down and the plants really start to struggle.
Yeah, it's just the breakdown of soil functional properties that is desirable for plant health. That's what happens roughly below the 2% threshold, which I've found a lot of evidence
Yeah.
within the soil science literature stating that this happens.
Yeah, so what it would mean is, if we convert that, so if we use this 58%, we'll do it as 50%. So you found 2% total organic carbon.
Yeah.
And if we double that to get to organic matter, we get to 4%.
Yeah.
And the Forbes spec says roughly between 2 and 5% is acceptable.
Yeah.
Which means that the majority of the range in the Forbes spec is below the threshold
'cause,
that should sustain plants.
Yeah, a lot of people will be like, oh, what's the minimum cost I could,
This is exactly
apply to the bioretention system that I can get away with following the guidelines. A lot of people would go towards that lower end of the spectrum.
And this is exactly it. I've spoken to filter media suppliers, and adding organic matter adds a big cost to the cost of filter media. So of course, they're trying to tread the fine line of making a media that's compliant, making a media that actually grows stuff, and making something that's cost effective.
Yeah.
So of course, if they're going to look at that guideline and be like, oh, 2% is acceptable, there's a chance they're going to go at 2%, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So we got findings there. With your soil science mind, like you talking about implications, or like talking about why this caught your attention?
Because I guess it has a direct impact on bioretention performance, or potentially have a direct impact on bioretention performance, particularly regarding plant health and bleaching.
Yeah.
There's a whole range in my paper that I discuss. I talk about cation exchange capacity. I talk about soil aggregation. I talk about humus generation. I talk about water holding capacity. And I talk about soil microbes, and all of this is connected to organic carbon.
Well, let's dig in a little. Obviously there's like 5 different things you've mentioned there.
Yeah.
But let's pick one and start and dig in a little bit. So I reckon people who might be fairly familiar with soil might be able to get, because they understand a compost heap is like broken down by the microbes and.
Yeah. Okay.
But what about soil aggregates and stability?
Okay.
Can we go down that route?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
So there's a lot of papers that I reference in the conference paper I'm publishing that say that soil aggregate stability starts to break down at around 2 to 1.8% organic carbon. So anything below that 2% threshold, it starts to break down. It starts to really break down at about 1.3% organic carbon.
Okay.
And the significance of aggregate stability is that it's a great indicator of soil health and soil structural health. It has a host of different benefits towards the soil in regards to microbial health, water holding capacity.
So when we say it breaks down,
The aggregates start to fall apart.
yeah, okay. No, we need to define some terms so I'm really clear on this. Okay, so you've said when we say it breaks down, the aggregates fall apart.
Yeah.
What's an aggregate specifically?
Okay.
So is an aggregate a grain of sand, or is an aggregate like some organic matter stuck to a grain of sand? Like, what's an aggregate?
A little bit like that. And a soil aggregate, I guess, is a combination of inorganic matter, so like sand or clay, that's stuck together by different kinds of organic matter, and it like clumps together, and it's binded by the exudes of like microbial and bacterial activity, and also organic matter has those binding properties as well. So it's just a clump of soil that is made up of minerals, organic matter, and anything in between.
And the exudates and that
yeah.
stuff. Okay. And so
it's mainly binded by. It's also binded by fungal hyphae as well. So
Okay.
and plant roots.
Okay.
So it's just anything. It's just the clumping together of soil particles.
Okay. And so when there's less than, say, 2% or total organic carbon, but
Yeah.
particularly less than 1.3% that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
these start to break apart.
Yeah.
So what specifically is their role in a healthy soil? Then?
The role in a healthy soil is, one, it provides excellent habitat for microbial growth and diversity. And it also shields, I guess, the breakdown of organic carbon over time by the inorganic fractions of the aggregate, kind of shields the organic matter which microbes live off from being eaten, because microbes, they eat organic matter. So if the aggregates kind of shield this from happening, and it kind of stabilizes the organic carbon pool and slows down that sort of diminishing organic carbon pool over time.
So that's interesting. So if we take it for granted that organic carbon and organic matter, but organic carbon is good in a soil, we've got this funny situation where if we have a good amount of it, you're likely to have better aggregates, and it's going to be more stable and you're less likely to use it.
Yeah.
But once you hit a threshold and there's only a small amount of it, the aggregates break down and it's easier to lose the little bit that you have. So it's like falling off, it's like jumping off a cliff and
And particularly in bioretention system, which is a sand-dominated soil that lacks clay content, the only real thing that's going to create soil aggregates is the organic matter fraction.
Yeah.
So when there's a lack of clay, because the two things that are very important for the formation of soil aggregates, that's organic matter and clay. And we don't have much clay in bioretention filter meter, so you're reliant on organic matter. And if this organic matter is lacking, these aggregates won't form.
Do you think, and I might be asking you to speak off the cuff here, but do you think that if we had a filter media that had some fine particles in it and organic matter, so therefore we were likely to have soil aggregates formed up of both the sand but then the fine particles out of here, and then if we contrasted that to the same fraction of sand and the same fraction of fine particles, but with less organic matter, so that the aggregates are going to start to break down, what do you think would be likely to happen to the fine particles in that, in terms of, so what I'm getting at here is the potential problem with fine particles in filter media is too many of them can lead to clogging.
Yeah.
But there's also a potential risk of them being, if they're not stable in the filter media, of being washed through the filter media. So I think what I'm trying to ask you is, do you think that organic matter could play a role? I
think I know what you're getting
leading
at.
up? Okay.
Okay. I haven't looked into this too much, but theoretically, the creation of soil aggregates would incorporate these finer particles and would reduce the amount of finer particles exiting a bioretention system.
Yeah.
So it kind of like, I guess, it'll allow for the bioretention to absorb these finer soil, sand and silt particles that would otherwise be suspended and discharged throughout the system. So I think that's what you're getting. It allows them to incorporate it into the soil aggregation process.
Yeah, well, one hypothesis I've heard floating around sometimes is that fine particles might get washed out of filter media over time. So you might have a filter media that's built initially, obviously with not heaps and heaps of fine particles, but with a few, and that's got some potential benefits for water holding capacity and whatnot. But I've also heard it suggested that they can be washed out.
Yeah.
So I was kind of getting at, is there this kind of situation where you could come up with a good balance where you've got some fine particles and some organic matter, and they help to form soil aggregates and hold themselves together, and there's a spot for that as balance?
There would definitely be that sort of balance existing. Whatever that balance is, I haven't looked into it. I haven't really asked myself that question before, but I'm sure that you could find that balance where the suspension of finer particles would be reduced because of the formation of soil aggregates.
Yeah. Another question. I realize I'm asking you to speak off the cuff on stuff, but
no, it's okay.
But the reality is, this is like what you. I can't remember whether we said this on camera, but we made a comment that like my initial looks into this space and like your paper, it's like hypothesis generation.
Yeah, it
right?
is.
It's not proof of this stuff. So I suppose I'm throwing these things at you in the same realm of hypothesis generation.
Yeah.
And maybe we can't answer them now, and that's totally okay, because someone else might be like, oh, wait, that's triggered an idea.
Let's explore it.
Exactly.
That's what my paper was about. It's just about, let's ask these questions and explore them.
Yep.
There is, outside the field of bioretention, there exists minimum thresholds of soil organic carbon, and why wouldn't they exist in bioretention systems? So let's test it. That's pretty much what.
Well, and ultimately, I think that's why your paper generated good discussion in the question and answers afterwards. Some papers don't, and in your case, it ended up with a bit of a back and forth between you and a couple of people in the audience, and I chipped in, and it's good for that reason. So, question here. Okay, I mentioned that one of the concerns with fines in filter media is clogging of the filter media.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about whether formation of soil aggregates improves hydraulic conductivity? So again, if you could imagine a filter media that had some fines, so you had some fines of an inorganic nature and not much organic matter or soil organic carbon, and if you compared that then to exactly the same filter media but with more organic carbon or organic matter, have you come across anything that would suggest if that would change hydraulic conductivity?
In soils dominated by finer particles like clay-based soils, the formation of salt aggregates would improve drainage and all that stuff. But this is a sand-based soil we're talking about, so it is already really easily drained, and hydraulic conductivity would.
Yeah, but you don't have to bump up the fines content too much in bioretention filter media, and you can knock the hydraulic conductivity down into between 10 and 20 mils an hour. You don't have to get that high to make it drain quite slowly. But I take your point. So.
I mean, I haven't explored this. This is definitely off the cuff. But I haven't actually explored the effects of soil aggregates on hydraulic conductivity. But I know that the creation of aggregates is related to hydraulic conductivity. I haven't looked at the effects of this on sand soils too much.
So there's another potential study in that.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. Okay. So I've asked you a few questions there. Are there any other points that you would like to bring up from the paper or to make?
Okay. On the topic of aggregates or just anything?
On any topic that was in the paper.
I think another huge part of the paper was the discussion on cation exchange capacity.
Okay.
Because bioretentions are known to, sometimes be an exporter of nutrients or have trouble, absorbing some of these dissolved nutrient pollutants, and the establishment of efficient cation exchange capacity is either related to organic matter or clay content.
Yep.
Since there's really low clay content in bioretention systems or bioretention filter media, it's reliant on organic matter.
Yep.
And if there's not enough organic matter in the bioretention system, it's just going to be prone to leaching. And this is referenced in my paper as being a phenomena that exists outside bioretention systems. Sandy soils lacking clay and organic matter is very prone to leaching, and establishing efficient or adequate cation exchange capacity might help in regards to filtering more dissolved nutrient pollutants.
Yeah. So
that was I guess it might help with, I guess, the overall performance of bioretention systems in regards to their potential for filtering dissolved nutrient pollutants.
Yeah, so I can see where you're going with this. Just for people who aren't really into soil science, what's the brief description of what cation exchange capacity is?
This is the whole problem with science. That we don't explain things. We just talk about stuff like everyone knows.
But this is totally okay. This is what my role in this conversation is, right? Is to try and interpret. So this is totally fine.
That's great.
So what is cation exchange capacity?
Essentially, cation exchange capacity, or CEC for short, is just the negative charge of a soil. There's two components of a soil that creates negative charge, and that's clay and organic matter. Mm-hmm. And so it's pretty much the cation exchange capacity is, I guess, the measurement of negative charge within the soil. And if you want to get more complicated than that, and it's the actual exchange of ions between the negatively charged, the positively charged ions attached to the negatively charged soil surfaces, and it's exchanged from plants to the soil.
So is it the case that some of these things that we're concerned about leaching from systems, are they positively charged? So if you have a high cation exchange capacity, they can become adhered to or stuck to the soil? That's really what we're saying.
Yes.
It's their ability to get stuck and bound up in the soil.
So simply put, imagine my hand is like a surface of a organic matter or clay, and here's an ion, which could be nitrogen or whatever positively charged ion you want, or cation with a positively charged. It's like a magnet, and it attracts. So that's essentially the role of cation exchange capacity in stopping nutrient leaching. So if it's not, so for example, if your soil is dominated by sand, there's no negative charge, so the ions won't attract, and they'll just flush out of the system and pollute downstream systems that it's connected to.
And this is the irony of how we've got to sandy filter media, because there has definitely been research that shows, and I know we've talked about this, because this gets to the conversation of not organic matter's the same. There's definitely been research that shows with certain types of organic matter, high amounts of certain types of organic matter in bioretention systems, they're really prone to leaching. But not organic matter's the same. So it's potentially that there's a situation where if you could increase organic matter content or soil organic carbon content without increasing nutrient loads, because it's really the high nutrient loads associated with some organic matter that leads to leaching. But the problem is that because we've had this research that said, high organic matter content and high nutrient content leads to leaching, we've ended up with a filter media spec that says don't put organic matter in. But it's quite possible that you could, if you put in the right types of organic matter, you could have high soil organic carbon and therefore high cation exchange capacity.
Or negative charge, high negative charge.
Yep, exactly. Without high nutrient levels in the soil, and therefore high ability to bind up nutrients coming through, low likelihood of leaching any that are already in there. Is that fair?
Fair that is exactly, I guess, what I allude to in the paper is the type of organic matter used or organic carbon used is very important. I think you've discussed before on your channel the different types of organic matter or organic carbon. There's like the labile source, which is easily decomposed by microorganisms, and then you have the stable form, which is not so very hard to decompose, and there's the nutrient load isn't as high with stable forms of carbon. Then there's the recalcitrant, which is extremely stable, which could last in soil from 100 to 1,000 years. So choosing the correct type of organic carbon for the job is extremely important. Is the organic carbon fit for purpose?
Yep.
And that purpose is creating that negative charge as well as all the other benefits organic carbon has, and as well as to not being prone to leaching. So it's extremely important the type of organic carbon you select within your filter media.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe if we start to wrap this up, key messages that I've heard, and tell me if I miss anything here from this, are the literature says that there is a threshold in soils for soil organic carbon, below which soil aggregates start to break down and plants start to suffer.
Yeah.
It would seem that that many bioretention systems being built have soil organic carbon contents below that threshold, so it's not surprising that they're inhospitable environments.
Yeah.
And that it seems quite possible that if we specify the right types of organic matter, that we could get the best of both worlds, where we can have much more soil organic carbon than we currently do.
Which benefits plant health.
Exactly, without the risk of leaching.
Without the risk. It's a win-win if you just specify the correct type of organic carbon. You have increased plant performance, which increases bioretention performance. It actually, with the more plants and the healthier the plants, it increases the potential for bioremediating nutrients within the filter media, which reduces leaching as well. And another thing I don't think we have time to talk about is because I think you're about to wrap this up.
That's okay. Throw it at me though.
Okay. There's water holding capacity, the effects of organic carbon on water holding capacity.
Yep.
And the simple fact that the more water that is held within the bioretention system, the less of that would exit it, as well as all the nutrients that is dissolved within that.
Yeah, well, and this starts to tie into, if people are interested in discussions about that, then Alan Hoban's presentation at the conference and a previous episode where I sat down and talked with Alan. Actually, I got a couple of previous episodes of Ideanthro. But yeah, certainly our understanding of what happens to water in bioretention systems is changing. Because if you run a music model at present, you'll get, the bioretention system reduced flow, mean annual volumes of water by 3% or something like that.
Yeah.
But the literature that's emerging actually says, bioretention systems can remove a lot more water that just kind of disappears from the system than that. If we assume that nutrients are leaching from bioretention systems at a set concentration, at 5 milligrams per litre, just to make up a number, then the more water you can retain in the bioretention system, the less water that comes out, the less nutrient leaches out as well.
As well as, the nutrients contained, because there's a lot of nutrients that bioretention systems don't absorb, it just passes through. So if we were to capture more of that water, the less of those nutrients within that storm water would be exiting the system. It's kind of like I guess.
It's funny, like Alan Hoban for a while has been using this terminology, going, maybe bioretention systems are less like filters, they're more like sponges.
Yeah, and they are.
Yeah, but it hasn't really, for me, it hasn't quite, I've kind of got what he's been saying
there.
But
we could improve that sponge factor.
Yeah,
because right now we don't, the organic carbon content is obviously pretty low.
Yeah.
But if we were to, increase that organic carbon content to improve water holding capacity, you'd create a better sponge. And sandy soils are particularly sensitive to the effects of organic matter on water holding capacity. You don't even have to put in that much to have large effects on water holding capacity. So I think it's an extremely overlooked property of bioretention systems regarding their potential for being sponges.
Yep, I like it. That's triggered some new thoughts, some new angles for me to pursue. Okay. I started trying to wrap this up a second ago, but you were keen to talk about more stuff. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before I have another crack at wrapping this up?
So we talk about.
So we've gone aggregates, we've gone total organic carbon content, we've gone water holding capacity. We kind of skipped over microbes and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I think then we're getting into too much finer details. Unless you want to do a part 2, we could talk about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, let's see how we go. Let's leave it here for now. But no doubt I'm going to continue to be interested in this, and I can see that you will be as well. So maybe a part 2 happens at some point, because we just want to keep talking about it. Okay, let's wrap up. If anyone wants to get in contact with you because they've been interested in this and wants to know more or talk to you about it, where should people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
There's Jonas Larsen, and working at Renew Solutions. There's a lot of Jonas Larsens because there's a lot of Danish people on
Yeah, but Jonas Larsen Renew Solutions. Yeah. I know they'll be able to find you because I found your LinkedIn profile that way not long ago.
Okay.
So,
and then you could also email me at jonas@renewsolutions.com.au.
Okay, sweet, awesome. Thank you for taking the time to have a chat in this lovely location as well.
Right.
I appreciate it. And yeah, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you got questions, either hit us in the comments below or contact Jonas by those methods. Okay, have a good one. Did you just do the peace sign?
Yeah, I did.
Brad did that after his episode. That's going to be 2 episodes in a row that finish with someone doing the peace sign.
Cool.
Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.